The African leaders at the BRICS summit in Russia have stressed the need for global reforms to address economic, political, and development challenges. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa this week called for a recalibration of trade rules to foster industrialization and suggested that the World Trade Organization be reformed. Ramaphosa also demanded an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and once again advocated for Palestinian self-determination. The expanded BRICS group now includes Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia, with Turkey and others seeking membership. In the meantime, Nigeria and 12 other countries are now recognized as BRICS partner nations. The others include Algeria, Belarus, Bolivia, Cuba, Indonesia, Kazakhstan, Malaysia, Thailand, Turkey, Uganda, Uzbekistan, and Vietnam. King Charles III has told a summit of Commonwealth countries in Samoa this Friday that the past could not be changed, as he indirectly acknowledged calls from some of the Britain's former colonies for a reckoning over his role in the transatlantic slave trade. The British royal understood, and I quote, "The most painful aspects of our past continue to resonate," end of quote. He told leaders in Apia, the Samoan capital, but short of mentioning financial reparations that some of the leaders at the event have called for. The English king dismissed calls from Caribbean countries for leaders at the biennial event to explicitly discuss redress for Britain's role in the slave trade and mentioned the matter in his final joint statement. Meanwhile, Commonwealth leaders have agreed the time has come for a conversation about reparations for slave trade. That's why the UK's desire to keep the subject off the agenda at a two-day summit in Samoa. A document signed by 56 heads of government, including UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, acknowledges calls for discussions on reparatory justice for the abhorrent transatlantic slave trade. The statement says it is time for a meaningful, truthful, and respectful conversation. Sir Keir said there had been no discussions about money at the meeting, and that the UK is very clear in its position that it will not pay reparations. The 2024 Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Samoa was brought to a close, with the members confirming the appointment of Ghana's Foreign Minister, Shirley Bochwe, as the body's new Secretary General. Bochwe, a former lawmaker who has served as Ghana's Foreign Minister since 2017, has supported calls for reparations for transatlantic slavery and colonialism, a position that was also shared by the two other candidates who advised for the position. Bochwe said on social media that she was truly humbled to have been selected as the incoming Secretary General, adding, "The work indeed lies ahead." I'm now being joined by seasoned political scientist and international affairs expert, Professor Adele Jinadu. Professor Jinadu is a former executive director, Center for Advanced Social Science, and an active participant in the African and International Social Science Network. Good to have you on the program, Professor Adele Jinadu.
Thank you, Ruben. It's nice to be back with you. I know you are a very good inquisitor. So I will not ask you to be more charitable to me, but please be less uncharitable.
Well, Prof, let's start with the Commonwealth.
As you probe me.
Prof, yes. Let's start with the Commonwealth. The issue has been about reparations. Yes. The king says, well, there will be no reparation. Enough apology has been given. The British government is saying the same thing. Richard Rees, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, says, no, Britain has no money to give anybody. But the Caribbean countries are saying, oh, there should be reparations. Britain says, well, if you want reparations, it will be in the direction of reparatory justice. In other words, debt relief, reparation for institutions, and all of that. But now we have another African, after our own Chief Emeka Anyauku, being scheduled to become the next Commonwealth Secretary General. How important is that? And how important is this conversation about reparation? At a time when some members are talking about reform of the Commonwealth. Let's start there.
Ruben, I think it's important to give a context for the answer I will give to the question. You know, Chapter 2 of our Constitution has foreign policy objectives that the federal government of Nigeria should pursue. There were five objectives. One is promotion and protection of our national interest. Two, I think, is promotion of African integration and unity. Third is a promotion of international cooperation. Fourth is respect for international law and our treaty obligations. And the last one is we must work for a new international economic and political order. You know, it's a pity that African countries, and Nigeria in particular in recent years, has become more and less an agent pursuing the interests of the Western governments. And issues that we should pursue, we have not been pursuing them. To the extent that, in fact, when I talk to friends abroad, they say we have been recolonized. France, America, Britain, Germany, China, these are all countries now in the new scramble for Africa. And yet Nigeria is to be seen nowhere. And this debate on reparations was initially, I did my work on Frantz Fanon. There's a whole section on Frantz Fanon about reparations. And I think later, Abiola took it up, and the Jamaican High Commissioner in Lagos at the time, and they took it up, and we fought for it. But we have not been able to exert this type of pressure because we have not been strong. Look at the reparations that have been given to Israel because of the guilt conscience that the Western world has over what happened to them. What happened to Africa through the slave trade is much more worse. And yet they can justify giving Israel reparations and still talk about not giving us reparations. It's not just apologies we want. But I think, so the point I'm making now is that we really need, beyond this issue of Commonwealth reparations, Nigeria must be in the forefront of a new effort to go back to the spirit of the 60s and 70s, when we were in the forefront of a loud voice for Africa and for Nigeria. In the Commonwealth, we played a very, very vital role in the withdrawal of South Africa from the Commonwealth in 1964. But what has happened since then? In 2002, I think, Nigeria was suspended from the Commonwealth because of our domestic policies under Abacha. When Obasanjo came in, we played a leading role in the suspension of Zimbabwe from Africa, and that signal issue has really downgraded our profile in Africa, because we play to the tune of the Western powers to get Zimbabwe expelled or suspended from the Commonwealth because of the problem it had with Britain, with Margaret Thatcher and the British government, over what the agreement that they signed at independence. So the point I'm making is that I think there's a time now for us to sit down. And we have think tanks in this country, the NIIA, the NIPS, Bolaji Akemi has just started a foreign policy academy. Ibrahim Gambari has the Sahara something. So these are foreign policy. Let us see there is a huge crisis, and the black world, it becomes more and more helpless. And it seems like it's only South Africa standing up for Africa. So where is that spirit of Pan-Africanism that goaded people like Zik and so on? And for us to have in our constitution, the second foreign policy objective is promotion of African unity, integration and unity. We are not leading. We are not leading because those who are in government now just don't have an idea of what should Nigeria's place in the world be. Just as they don't also have an idea of what should the future of Nigeria be in terms of our domestic politics. So at the domestic level, we are sinking. At the foreign policy level, we are sinking. So I think that, and I appeal to our friends at the NIA, they should mount pressure on the government. Let us have a national dialogue, and I've said it on your program before, on Nigeria's place in the world.
Okay, Prof.
I mean, Britain cannot keep saying this.
Prof, I would like you to address the issue of reform at the level of the Commonwealth. There are members of the Commonwealth who are saying, well, we don't recognize King Charles III anymore as our king. Australia, Jamaica, specifically. And there are others who are saying, look, they would like to see a Commonwealth that plays a bigger role in geopolitics. Now they are talking about North Korea, South Korea, China, India, Iran, Iraq, and some members are saying, no, can we transform this body into a more strategic partner, like NATO, like other partners? Can you speak to that about reform?
Ruben, we've been talking about reform of the Commonwealth for many, many years. The bottom line is that this is all diversionary, as far as I'm concerned, because the structure of world politics within which the Commonwealth is situated, within which Africa and Nigeria are situated, is heavily loaded against us. So our foreign policy objectives under Channel 2 talks of promotion of African unity, cooperation and unity, and a reform of a new international world order. So when Britain had a review of its own foreign policy, placed in the world, it forgot the Commonwealth. It placed more emphasis on the European Union, went to the European Union, forgot the Commonwealth. Now, they've had a second rethink of what happened to them in the European Union, basically over sovereignty issues. The House of Lords, the Parliament should be the body to make law for England. They don't want to accept dictation from Brussels. It is the Supreme Court of England. They don't want any superior jurisdiction beyond the national one to be making laws for them in Brussels. So they've moved that. So they are now coming back to the Commonwealth, understandably. But the point is they've always resisted this. So let us find another reform. This is simply a subterfuge for doing nothing. Oh, they will set up a committee the next 3-4 years. What are we bringing to the table? What is our own demand? What is the source of it's the same thing with the International Monetary Fund. We talk of reform. What are we bringing to the table? Do we have a united voice? We cannot, when our leaders, not only in Nigeria, but also elsewhere in Africa, keep running to London, keep running to Paris to get instructions or to stash their money there. So I think it's not, I think beyond the Commonwealth, let us now see what we can do at the African level as an important world bloc to force them. Because if you don't force them, they will just talk of palliatives, reform. They don't mean it. That is my experience. So the talk of reform for me is simply what I would call epiphenomenal. It's simply a diversion to the basic issue. Why are they not? The basic point is that reparations has been given to Israel because of what Israel did to the Jews. And they also gave Israel a piece of land displacing Palestinians and Arabs. So what is it? And since the early 50s, Frantz Fanon in 56 was talking about reparations. Abdullah raised the issue again. But we have not. Because we keep running to the West, we keep running to America every time there's a problem, and they have their own interest to preserve. Because for us, as Gambari and Bola Jakemi have said many times, Africa must be the centerpiece of our foreign policy. Because in terms of our national interests, we cannot define our national interests in isolation in a very, very narrow sense. But in the broader concept of what I call enlightened self-interest, what will be the value added by,
As we need to wrap up, let's talk geopolitics. Now in Russia the other day, they have this meeting, BRICS summit, attended by Russia, Turkey, all kinds of partners, South Africa, India, Russia itself, and then 12 new partners admitted, including Nigeria, Malaysia, other countries. Now, this seems to be, some kind of comment on the evolving geopolitics today. How much of a threat is that to global peace? You recall that before now, we had the Axis, Japan, and the other people who faced the US and the Allies in the First World War. Second World War, you also had the Allies facing the West. After that, you had, what is it called now? Cold War, US versus other countries. After that, you had what they call the Axis of Evil, Iran, Iraq, and some other countries, facing the United States. Yes. Now, we seem to be back to square one, or somewhere in the middle, in terms of geopolitics. Is the world more threatened now than ever by BRICS? They are talking about an alternative system of power and payment system.
Yeah, I think we should. See, the BRICS is not really. I would hate to call it a third world kind of forum. In the way you talk of the non-aligned movement, because you have Russia there. Russia, for all practical purposes, is part of the Western world. It's a major power. China, but China has its own problems. It's Africa in terms of trying to replace, the new scramble for Africa. So I think the usefulness of BRICS will be to the extent to which it stands to promote an African interest, not just another forum where African countries will go and be begging for pittance from the table of the major powers there, Brazil, Russia, and China. But I think it's an important point of the, and it's nice that we've been given some status there. But again, I must go back. What are we going to gain from BRICS as a nation? Remember, the first objective of our foreign policy under Chapter 2 is promotion and protection of Nigeria's national interest. But that national interest is not to be viewed narrowly, in a very narrow, autarkic manner, separated from the rest of the world. How can we advance that interest in the context of what I call enlightened self-interest? What will our involvement with these multilateral organizations add? What value added will it add to our national interest that will make us, just as the isolated individual needs to work with others? That is an enlightened self-interest. So we too you cannot just isolate ourselves from the rest of the world. But unfortunately, there is some kind of isolationism in this country now. People are trying to withdraw. It seems to me that we are withdrawing from the world. Are preoccupied with domestic problems. But our domestic problems are intertwined with our place in the global order. So what is our foreign policy this time? Since Obasanjo left in 2007, So that's why my African friends in my own networks keep saying, Nigeria, what has happened to your country? What has happened to your country? You become a colonial territory again. Your leaders are running to France, they are running to Paris, they are running to America all the time, going to bed. So I think we need to provide that leadership that we provided in the fight against apartheid and in the decolonization of Southern Africa. The role that we played in that anti-colonial movement at that time, I think it's important we need to get back and really look at our foreign policy is in shambles today. And it's a pity. And we are not, on important issues, we are not talking. And we keep embarrassing ourselves in terms of our policy somersaults. So whether we join BRICS or not, I mean, when was even this debated in terms of national? We just hear that we have been admitted to BRICS. But what are we looking for in BRICS? What are we looking for in BRICS? What are we taking to BRICS? That must be the prior debate we must have. It's not just joining for the sake of joining. So that is what I'm saying. So whatever I'm saying now is that in the context of multilateralism, we must be guided by Chapter 2 of our Constitution, which talks of our national interest must be promoted and protected. So is our national interest going to be protected by joining BRICS? And if it's going to be protected, and yet we are not looking at the African context to strengthen institutions of African unity.
Okay. On that note, Prof, I would like to thank you. Just to put in a word there, that Chapter 2 talks about objectives and principles. It's a non-justiciable part of the Constitution. But I get the point you are making.
Yeah, but sorry. We have entered into certain international obligations.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Adele Jinadu, for joining us on this program. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for always, obliging us each time we come to you.